Yes, thank you so much for joining. And one of the things that I like to always start with is there anything from this current situation that you're learning about yourself or, just about life in general?
I think not necessarily learning, but confirming something that I suspected, that I would not be a good primary school teacher, because I
Oh,
have to homeschool my son now, and it's really, really hard. I don't know how they are able to just get little kids to focus and to learn and to enjoy learning. It's a miracle. Yeah.
what are some of the subjects that are,
Um,
yeah.
so he's in year one. So here in the UK, it's the second year that they're in school. And right now they're becoming more comfortable learning. They're like trying to get better at their handwriting, just very simple maths, but just getting him to just be still and focus is very tricky. Like he really likes to learn when there's like more cartoonish videos of things. Like the BBC is really good with the stuff that they've been releasing recently. But if it's a little bit less colorful, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to do it. Yeah.
I could see that. I'm like trying to
Yeah.
imagine back when I was that age, what kind of stuff I learned from, but I think it was a lot of TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so folks, we have the Q&A feature at the bottom, which is where you can ask any questions. And I should mention, in case you had questions about GitHub Primer, she's new to that team, so she might not have all the answers yet, but it's okay. There might still be some things from that or even past experiences that we can have questions about. But yeah, so how's it been so far on the primer team?
Oh, it's been great. It's fairly new. I joined just a couple of months ago, but there's I really like the way that the team and the company values design systems, and there's a lot of space for us to do very cool things.
Mm-hmm.
So just generally, it's been really good.
And you're a PM on it, right?
Well, the semi-official title is design producer.
Oh, okay.
But there's a lot of PM related day-to-day kind of things involved in that kind of role. I think it's also very maybe in other companies it would be something like design ops or something like that, but we just decided to go with that title.
So what kind of activities and tasks do you have as a design producer for design system?
There's right now the thing that I'm mostly focused on, it's actually documentation, so improving our documentation, but it's also just trying to figure out how, just in very simple terms, how things can be run more smoothly. Like are there any improvements in the processes that we're following, or even if there isn't a process defined to do something, can we define something so that it's more clear for everyone? So basically, it's not necessarily designing new components. It's more to do with I guess, behind the scenes. How are things? How can we put things in place that makes it easier for designers and engineers in our team to make their work easier, and also the users of the design system, how can we make their lives easier? It's a bit wishy-washy, but there's a lot of things involved in doing that kind of stuff.
Cool. And is that different from your past experiences with design systems?
No, not really. It's been, I mean, maybe earlier in my career, I was doing a lot more of actual visual design and front end. I guess front end to the point where you get to the JavaScript side of things, more like HTML and CSS. And now there's a lot. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess now there's less of that and more of the documentation. I really like that side of things, and just seeing how we can improve the way that we manage our work and we do our work.
So we have a question from Ryan, and he asks, how do you manage design systems roadmaps to allow for flexibility for immediate requests, such as new components, but also trying to steer the work towards a larger strategy and goal?
Yeah, I think generally there needs to be a balance between as a design, if you have a design systems team, as a team, you're probably aware of what things you want to do yourselves, like self-generated things that you want to do in the system that makes it better. Maybe you want to focus on making it work better in terms of responsiveness, or you want to focus on accessibility. Like, you know what things, you generally want which things are needed to make things better. But you also have to carve time to work on requests from other teams, right? There's always people wanting, they need things, some more urgently than others, but you also need to make some space for that. So I guess obviously it depends on your company and the teams that you're working with, but there needs to be a balance between in terms of planning and having a roadmap between self-initiated things and also responding to requests.
Awesome. And then Matthew also has a question. While we're on the topic of you joining the Primer team, how was the interview process at GitHub?
Well, I'm not sure I can speak to that. So maybe we can we can skip that question. Sorry.
Well, he did have a follow-up, which is,
okay.
Did you find anything particularly successful in positioning yourself for a design systems team role?
Yes. Well, I think my strong the thing that I'm stronger at, and also I do a fair bit of public speaking and write a little bit, maybe less in more recent times, but I tend to focus a lot of that kind of work on like collaboration. I talk about collaboration and how you can improve your documentation. And it's also something that I'm fairly passionate about, you know, about writing and about just, I really like to think about how all the knowledge that usually exists in designers and engineers' heads, how can we get that out of someone's head and write it down so that everyone else can share that knowledge. So because I'm really focused on that, I find it easier to, let's say I have to curate my portfolio or a presentation about the work that I do. That's something that I can usually show a lot of good work for. So also thinking about one of the things that I feel design systems teams is very important to do well is to show the work, make your work visible for the rest of the company, so that the company knows what you're doing, knows what you're working on, knows what's coming, and knows what your priorities are. And I also have experience doing that and improving that for teams. So that's also something that I like to highlight. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but yeah.
It sounded like that. Yeah, it sounded like it was the right answer.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was about to ask something and it just disappeared from my mind. Yeah, so actually, I think I met you at a conference, and so
Hmm.
I'm curious, like, are you still doing virtual public speaking, or has that kind of paused for you?
Yeah, I didn't have anything planned for this year anyway. So I feel like my public speaking usually comes in waves. Like I have years where, because I have a kid, I have full-time work. I don't necessarily, I'm not super proactive in like submitting proposals and things like that. So I just let people invite me. So some years, no one gets in touch, and other years, everyone just decides to get in touch for all the conferences in the same month. It's usually like that. So this year there wasn't anything planned. I think I may be doing something internal um, soon, but nothing else.
Do you have other primer people in the UK, or is most of the team in the US?
There's people in Europe, not in the UK, but there's people in Europe, in Berlin and in Paris, in Japan, and then across the US.
Cool. I imagine y'all probably work really well remotely. I actually used to work at GitHub way early,
Oh, cool.
early days, and they were really good about remote working.
Yeah, yeah. I feel really lucky, especially now with the current situation. It feel like the structure was already in place. There's some people that were still going to offices, but overall, I think it was in terms of work and the infrastructure, everything was in place for us to be able to work remotely. When it comes to the other, like more personal side of things, that's a different story. Yeah.
So Ryan asks, how do you at Primer or at previous jobs enforce consistency within your design system, notably for those designers who tend to go rogue? And then he also asks, do you reach out to them directly when you see their work has a diversion from the core components?
um, I'm not sure I love the word enforce. um, I guess so. One of the like guidelines that I try to keep in mind is that if we're so first of all, if we're evaluating, I guess, or doing a design review, doing critiques of designers' work, whatever checklist we have in our minds that we go through when we're looking at the designs and like evaluating those designs or whether they're conforming to the standards or not, that should be written down somewhere so that people know what the, I guess, the standard is, and can make a conscious choice of whether they need to break out of the box, or if following the guidelines is good enough for them. So I think in being in a design systems team, you need to be, I guess you need to try as much as possible to be aware of what other teams are doing. So maybe your company has a bunch of design reviews or sessions that you can participate in. Try to be aware of what people are doing. And I think that means that you'll be able to, if something is really, really going rogue, you can catch that sooner. But also, I feel like there's this like push and pull that is normal and there's actually healthy between a design system team and the rest of the teams. Like as a design system, you are a little bit more conservative in your approach to designing something, and maybe a product team is trying to make something a bit more creative, break some rules. And if they never tried to do that, then the design system wouldn't be able to evolve. So I think it's you don't necessarily want people to always follow the rules and never have new ideas. But yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think a good design system empowers change and evolution for sure. One of the things that we did at Salesforce was we had what we called advisory boards. So people could bring their designs and we could talk about, you know, should this become a new pattern, or is this a special snowflake and it's allowed to be, or is this really like you need to use one of the components that we have. And we would track who was coming to those meetings and what we talked about. And so every now and then you would get a team that would try to leapfrog us and just get something into the product. But one thing that we did have that was strict that you had to do was do the standards review, like before anything shipped out. And that was largely because of accessibility concerns and legal compliance and all that stuff. And so sometimes things would surface there and it's like, oh, you haven't been coming to advisory boards. And so it was basically in their best interest to come to the advisory boards so that we could like work through those solutions together and make sure that it's legally compliant and accessible and like all that, like privacy and all the concerns that we had were solved earlier.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand that not every team and not every project will be able to follow all the steps that as a design system you want them to follow. Like sometimes things need to go out tomorrow, and so it's important to consider what things really need to be in place, and maybe it is following all the accessibility guidelines, and there's like that has to be done 100%, but everything else can be fixed later. Yeah.
Awesome. So this is going to be kind of a left field question, but I was just curious, like, what kind of fun activities or things are you doing right now to stimulate like creativity? And not that you have to be, but you are.
Yeah, well, I think as many people in the world, I don't know if this is fostering any creativity whatsoever, but I have been playing Animal Crossing. But I've actually, so I listen to a lot of podcasts in normal times, but recently I started listening to a lot more audiobooks than I would normally do, and I usually just listen to nonfiction, but I started listening to more fiction, and I'm really enjoying that. So like completely non-related to work, but it makes it easier. Not as, I guess maybe the goal right now is not to foster creativity, but more like to calm the brain a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I've been binge watching some shows, which I know is not the healthiest activity, but it does kind of help calm me sometimes, and depends on what I'm watching.
I have been watching a lot of stuff recently as well. Yeah.
Cool. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is like, so I used to do a lot of arts and crafts, and then I kind of stopped doing them because, you know, I just was busy with a ton of work. And so like seeing all these people making masks and things like that have me like kind of wanting to get crafty. And so I'm thinking I might start trying to learn how to make masks.
Yeah, before the lockdown started here, I went and bought a ton of crafts material because I just suddenly thought, oh, I have to entertain a 5-year-old. Yeah, so I actually have enjoyed spending some time with him, also just like letting him build robots and things like that.
Awesome. I notice the little octocat in the background there.
Yeah.
Have you, this is kind of a silly question, but have you tried drawing your own version of an octocat yet?
No, I haven't. No, that actually might be a nice activity to do with my son.
I actually have one in the, what do they call it? The Octodex or something like that. And it was for a party. It was like celebrating, I think it was like 100,000 users or something like that, or it might not have been that many users, but I basically drew like a cat with like a beer and like hipster Wayfair glasses and like a V-neck t-shirt, because I was basically drawing my boyfriend at the time as like this
Yeah.
little party cat. It's kind of silly, but it's fun.
Yeah, is it still there on the website? I need to go and find it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have like a whole gallery of all the different ones
Yeah.
people drawn. Very cool. So I guess back on the topic of design systems, what would you say would be like maybe like your biggest advice that you would give people in terms of design systems, like maybe things that you're seeing people debate about that you have a stance on that you want to share?
Oh, should have prepared the
Oh, no
question.
worries.
I don't know. I guess that maybe I already said it, which is if there's something that only exists in your head as someone that maybe is in a design systems team, and you've had to say it out loud because people don't know about it, that should be written down somewhere. So basically it's just like trying to find opportunities to document things, which is not a, it's not a fun and shiny thing that everyone loves doing, but I think it's very important. Because even like I have documented things that I've written down myself, and then I forget, and then I go and read the thing that I wrote. So I think that's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Miriam Suzanne likes to say, if you don't document it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. And
everybody knows about it.
I don't know where I heard fairly recently someone say the term documentation driven design or something. It was not design, but I thought that was really it was really interesting. So kind of like that, if it's not documented, it doesn't exist, or it's not something that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that, like, just thinking back on all the past design system initiatives that I've been involved with, documentation is probably one of the largest pieces of it. And whether you like it or not, like, that's the reality of it. Yeah. Do you have tips that you think make for great design systems documentation, like things that you think are essential, things that you think people shouldn't bother doing, or anything like that?
I think, well, you should definitely cover the basics, color, spacing. People really, really, really like templates. Even if they're not like, let's say, code templates or Figma templates, but even just like a screenshot of a couple of the main templates that you use. But I think that you should focus on the basics before you start documenting things that you still want to do in the future. Like I know that, for instance, animation, it's one of the things that usually comes last, but it's one of the more fun things. But maybe if you haven't documented your colors or simpler things like that, you should start with that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I also find sometimes people will over document, and I don't mean to say like being verbose is necessarily bad, because sometimes you need to be verbose, but what I mean is like they'll show, here is the entire markup that gets spit out by this component, and it's like, do I really need to see that or know that? Like, what I need to know is, what is the tag that I need to use to display that, all that. And so I try to show like what is the actual code that people need to know and use, rather than what gets spit out.
Yeah. I think I guess when I'm writing a piece of documentation, my goal is to summarize as much as I can, so that the page doesn't look like overwhelming. Oh no, I have to read all of this stuff. But the information is there. So just like, just extract the core thing that people need to know. Like, here are all our grays, and here's when you would want to use each of them. and here's the code. How can you make that into as fewer words as possible?
Yeah, exactly. Matthew asks, when it's time for a product designer to contribute back to the system, like a component that they designed or built that didn't exist, or like a new set of icons, what do you think the best way of going about that is? For example, the product designer directly submitting a PR, or more or less handing it off to the design system team?
Actually, that's something that that's a process that we're trying to improve right now in Primer. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that people can collaborate or contribute in a few different ways. So if the way that you want to contribute is with a PR, then obviously that's great. But if all you have right now is an idea and some use cases, that's also good, and we will also take that in, so that people don't feel like, oh, I need to have this fully fledged design and code, otherwise I won't be able to collaborate, to contribute to the design system. So we're trying to document all the different ways that people can contribute. What was the question again? Was that, what is the best?
Yeah, what's the best way of going about them coming back, as well as, or basically, like, for example, like, are they doing the PR? Are they coming to you? So you pretty much answered it, I think.
Yeah, and so now we're trying to determine what are like the ideal steps that something new has to follow. For instance, one of the things that we feel most either feature requests or contributions need to go through, one step that we find is quite essential is an audit. So like basically an inventory of how is this being done currently in the product or in different products? Has this been tried before? And just try get that collection of all the different examples before we have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think the conversation part of it is essential. One of the mistakes that we did on the Lightning design system that we thought was going to be helpful but ended up being more hurtful was we had created a component request form, and we thought that would help us like triage and all that. But what it ended up doing was it created this expectation that if I'm filling out this form, this component is going to get built for me. And it almost became like a service-based thing. And we were like, no, that's not what this was meant to be. And so we had to take that down and be like, no, like, let's have the conversation.
That's actually really interesting. That's really interesting that sets that expectation. I hadn't thought of that, but that makes sense.
Almost like you're doing the work of filling out the form, so you get
a exactly. Yeah.
Well, awesome. We're coming up on time, so the last question I want to ask is, do you have anything coming up for you that we can look out for, as well as ways the community can support you?
Well, I guess no, not really. Follow the Primer Design System on Twitter. I guess when we have new stuff coming up, it will be posted there. Other than that, I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you everyone who attended today.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.